Uh, the list of dumb shit I'm reading on the internet from Florida State fans over the last week or so is honestly alarming. It's I don't know where they're getting some of this information. Well, I have a feeling they're just getting it from random Twitter accounts. But look, the Florida State leaving the ACC. I completely agree that Florida State probably wishes they could leave the ACC. That they're probably not happy with their TV deal that they willingly signed and then bragged about in public statements after they signed it. But let's just go back to the basics for a minute, because part of the problem, there's people that just don't understand the basic sort of how this thing is structured. So there's two different situations in place with Florida State. There's the ACC's TV deal with ESPN. That determines how much money a year the ACC gets from ESPN. The ACC then takes that money, divides it by 14, and gives each team their share. You'll remember a few months ago there was some talk about the percentages being changed. So instead of every ACC team getting 7% of the revenue or whatever it is, they were, Florida State and Clemson in particular were asking for a higher percentage, and other teams would have to agree to take a lower percentage. The TV money is paid to the ACC, not to ESPN's not sending Florida State a check every month or every year. The money goes to the ACC. So the ACC as a conference signed the TV deal with ESPN. Now, the 14-member institutions of the ACC all had to sign off on the deal, which they did. And again, Florida State publicly bragged about the TV deal when it was made. Separately and apart from that is the grant of rights. The grant of rights has nothing to do with ESPN or Disney or any TV network or channel. The grant of rights is a deal signed between the ACC and each of its member schools, including Florida State. Florida State signed its TV rights away to the ACC, not to ESPN. Florida State signed, and every school in the ACC signed their TV rights. They granted their TV rights to the ACC through 2034. What that means is any TV revenue generated by any ACC school goes to the ACC first. Again, the schools are not paid from the networks. I don't know where all these people are getting this stuff on the internet. So Florida State can leave the ACC. That's true. Anybody can leave any conference at any time. There's nothing legally that keeps a team in a conference for any length of time. Nothing. There's a buyout. So Florida State's buyout to the ACC right now is about $120 million. That's a lot of money, but probably affordable if you scrimped and saved. So what would that accomplish for Florida State or any other team in the ACC? Florida State writes a check to the ACC. Florida State's then out of the ACC. And they're free to join any conference they want, or any conference that'll take them, or to join no conference at all. What would Florida State then have to do? Well, Florida State doesn't have a TV deal. The ACC has a TV deal, right? Florida State would have to then get a TV deal with what? So in theory, if they joined the SEC or the Big Ten, they'd be a part of that SEC or Big Ten TV deal, right? Well, here's the problem. The grant of rights still exists. Florida State has signed over their TV rights through 2034. If Florida State pays the ACC the $120 million, leaves the ACC and joins the Big Ten, the SEC, another conference, or goes independent, any money that Florida State gets TV-wise goes straight to the ACC until 2034. That's what the grant of rights is. Now, if you want to talk about ways to try to get out of the grant of rights, that's fine. That's a separate conversation. We can have that conversation. But we had to get that out of the way first, because there's too many people that just don't understand that there's two different issues. There's the ACC as a conference TV contract with ESPN, And then there's the grant of rights, which exists between the ACC and each member school. And the grant of rights is what is making all of this so complicated and difficult for Florida State or Clemson or whatever fill-in-the-blank school that wants or thinks they're leaving the ACC. I've got fans. I had a guy yesterday, Florida State guy yesterday, and it's always somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who cuts the lawn of Mike Norvell's, a car mechanic, or just weird shit like that. But it's already in the works. Florida State's going to pay a $300 million buyout to the ACC. Where they get this $300 million number from, I have no idea. The buyout to the ACC is about $120 million. But they're going to pay a $300 million buyout to the ACC that's going to be payable in $30 million increments over the next 10 years. Okay, let's think about that for a second, okay? Let's say this person is right, and Florida State leaves the ACC under this mythical $300 million buyout, okay? Payable over 10 years to the ACC at $30 million a year for 10 years, okay? And Florida State joins the SEC. SEC teams make what, $60 million a year, $70 million, whatever it is. Let's say $60 million a year. So, Florida State's going to leave the ACC. They're going to go to the SEC. The SEC is going to pay Florida State $60 million. Florida State then has to give $30 million of that to the ACC. So they're only making $30 million a year in the SEC. They're making $32 million right now in the ACC. This shit makes no sense. This shit makes no sense. Where is this date of August 15th coming from, too? All over Twitter, you see Florida State fans. Just wait, August 15th, it's happening. August. This is like the biggest secret that everyone knows and is willing to talk about. Let me tell you something right now. Anybody, and I mean anybody, that actually knew the date that Florida State was winning the ACC would not be on Twitter talking about it. Nobody. How do I know that? Let's go back just a couple of weeks ago, or a week ago. Colorado announces they're leaving the Big 12, or the Pac-12 to go to the Pac-12. Leaving the Pac-12 to go to the Big 12, right? How many people, the day before that happened, 2 days before that happened, or a week before that happened, were on Twitter saying, hey, don't tell anybody, but I know Colorado's leaving the Big 12 on this date and or leaving the Pac-12 on this date and going to the Big 12. I'm putting it on Twitter for my 13 followers to see, but don't tell anybody. It's a huge secret. Nobody. Southern Cal and UCLA to the Big Ten. How many people were on Twitter a week before Southern Cal and UCLA announced they were moving to the Big Ten going, hey, I'm going to tell all my Twitter followers, all 30 of them, a secret. I know from a friend of a friend of a friend who used to babysit Lincoln Riley's nephew, Southern Cal and UCLA are going to the Big Ten in a week. Nobody. Not a single soul. Nobody. Go back 2 years, Texas and Oklahoma. How many people were on Twitter going, hey, Texas and Oklahoma are leaving the Big 12 for the SEC. Don't tell anybody. I'm only telling you because you're my Twitter follower. Nobody. The point is, when these things are actually happening, you don't know. You have no idea. No clue. Now, I'm not talking about realignment fetish people who post 100 tweets a day or 100 videos a month or whatever about every possible realignment scenario on Earth, so that no matter what ends up happening and no matter when it ends up happening, they can point back at some random tweet and go, see, I told you that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people that are actually claiming, like they're doing with the Florida State to the SEC or the Big Ten. I mean, just go look on Twitter. Type in, do a Twitter search for FSU Big Ten, FSU SEC. All these people on Twitter, I don't know where this rumor started, but all these people on Twitter, Florida State's secretly leaving the ACC on August 15th. Don't tell anybody. They figured out how to get out of the ACC, and they figured out how to get out of the grant of rights, which again is two separate deals. And it's happening on August 15th, but don't tell anybody. I know the buyout to the ACC is only $120 million, but somehow they're going to pay $300 million, but they're going to get the payment spread out over 10 years, and blah, 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 blah. It's absolutely insane. First of all, I don't really understand why there are any Florida State fans out there who would want to go from being an average ACC team to a doormat SEC or Big Ten team. It doesn't make any sense to me. You're on pace to have your best year in a decade this year. You're ranked in the top 10 in most preseason polls. You got a chance against LSU. You got a chance against Clemson to prove things. And I'm high on Florida State this year. I think they're going to be a good team. I'm not anti-Florida State this year. I think they're going to be good. I think not only are they going to start in the top 10, I think they're going to finish the year in the top 10 too. I don't know if they'll quite be able to get to the playoff level or national championship level, but I think they'll compete to win the ACC and will finish in the top 10 probable New Year's Six Bowl. So, I'm not out here just hating on FSU. I think they're going to have a good team. Why are you looking to go from that to finishing 7th or 8th in the SEC every year, or 5th or 6th in the Big Ten every year? I don't understand. It's a little weird and a little strange to me. I know that you feel like you're behind the ball financially because of the TV deal, but again, no one put a gun to Florida State or Clemson's head and forced them to sign these TV deals. They willingly signed them, and they bragged about it at the time of signing it. It's just now other conferences. Look, this is how this is going to work. You know what it is? It's like quarterback salaries in the NFL, right? Jalen Hurts makes more than Patrick Mahomes. Just let that sink in. Jalen Hurts makes more than Patrick Mahomes. Why? Pat Mahomes signed his contract a couple of years ago. Jalen Hurts just signed his this offseason. That's how it works. If Patrick Mahomes redoes his contract next year or the year after, he's going to demand more than Jalen Hurts. So it's a back and forth deal. So, the ACC signed its deal. It was a good deal 8 years ago or whatever when they signed it. Then the SEC redoes their deal 6 or 7 years later. It's a much better deal than the ACC. Now the Big Ten is the most recent conference to redo their deal, and it's better than the SEC. When the SEC deal comes back up in 2030 or 2032, whenever the hell it is, that deal will then surpass the Big Ten deal. It's going to flip-flop back and forth to whoever has signed the most recent deal. Again, no one forced you to sign this 12-year deal or whatever you did through 2034 with a strange grant of rights in there. Now, look, again, you shouldn't have signed a grant of rights. Your school signed this thing. Your school presidents, your athletic administrator, all these people, they signed off on this. The ACC owns every Florida State sporting event broadcast on TV from now till 2034. So unless you can figure out a way to get it out of that grant of rights, it's going to be nearly impossible for FSU or anyone else to leave the ACC. Why? Because if they leave the ACC, they go from getting $32 million a year TV money from the ACC to getting $0 million a year in TV money because the ACC owns all of their TV rights. You want to talk to me about contract law? Everybody on Twitter's a lawyer. That's fine. I'm not. I'm a scientist. So short of some long, protracted legal battle involving the grant of rights, Florida State's not leaving the ACC. Not today. Not on August 15th. I don't really understand. And isn't it funny, too? All this started when Colorado announces they're leaving the Pac-12. And then all of a sudden, Florida State fans are mad. Oh, God, more teams leaving, and we're still stuck, and they're stomping around their basement, and they're mad as shit. Also, keep this in mind. When did Texas and Oklahoma leave to go to the SEC? This season? No, next season. Why aren't they in the SEC this year? Why aren't they in the SEC last year? Why? Because of their TV contract with the Big 12, they had to wait until the TV contract either ended or was in the last year or so, but so that the buyout became affordable. Why did Southern Cal and UCLA make the announcement that they were joining the Big Ten in 2024? Why didn't Southern Cal, this was announced a year ago, why didn't Southern Cal and UCLA just decide to join the Big Ten this season? Because of the TV contract that the Pac-12 had. They waited an additional year, contract over, they pay no buyout, it's easy for them to move and leave. Why is Colorado leaving? No TV contract, it expires this year. This is the last year of the TV contract in the Pac-12. They can easily leave. What makes you think Florida State and Clemson are dipping out on the ACC with 10 years to go on the TV contract? Again, I know you don't like the TV deal. No one forced you to sign it. I'm not saying Florida State or Clemson or whoever else cannot get out of the ACC anyway, no matter what, before 2034. I'm not saying that. But it's going to take a miracle, an act of God, an act of something to get them out sooner rather than later. The amount of money we're talking with the buyout, 120 million, is a lot of damn money. And that doesn't even scratch the surface of the value of the grant of rights deal, which again runs for really another 11 years through 2034. It's not as easy. I even had one of them tell me, well, all Florida State has to do is leave the ACC. That's it. All they had to do is come out tomorrow, announce they're leaving the ACC, and then the grant of rights automatically goes away because the grant of rights only applies to ACC teams. And if Florida State's no longer in the ACC, then the grant of rights no longer applies to Florida State. My God, son, you have cracked the Da Vinci Code here. You're smarter than every lawyer on the planet. You're wasting your time communicating with your 9 Twitter followers. Start a law firm, man.